Hi again then guys, and welcome to another installment of Beards and Cars, the more podcast style series where we talk about particular topics or countdowns or speculation videos in a more long form discussion type manner between me and you in the comments below as well. And this time it's a bit more of an abstract, much more broad subject or concept, kind of a countdown but not really. It's just, as you saw from the title of course, 5 vehicles in particular that I personally feel should have been made. Now when I say they should have been made, some of them are understandable that they didn't, but some I think would have had a lot of potential in their particular markets. Now to clarify the rules, if you will, you can of course put your picks down below. It doesn't have to be 5. I'm doing 5 more so just for the sake of the length of the video, but these are just 5 cars that popped out to me that, looking back through recent years in particular, I would have loved to have seen these 5 cars produced by their respective manufacturers. Some of them are variations on a theme, some of them are completely new cars that they just didn't build. Now of course with a subject that's this broad, you could pretty much say anything. But that's kind of the point. It allows for maximum creativity. You could, for instance, say, I wish Porsche had made a 1000 horsepower twin-turbo Carrera GT, or that Panoz had made a gas turbine-powered Le Mans car. But that's kind of the point. It allows for the ultimate sandbox creativity. Just let your mind completely free. What would you like to have seen? And it doesn't have to be a variation, it could have been something that they'd never done, not just a variation on a theme. But the 5 in particular for me, I'm going to kick off first of all with one that's not an obvious choice, but anyone who is a fan of this brand as well will probably go, yeah, that's actually a point. Now, Skoda is the kind of name that as soon as I say it, some people will go, oh, who cares about Skoda? Well, actually quite a few of us do. Personally, I have a lot of love for Skoda. The Fabia WRC car from around 2005 is actually my favourite rally car of all time. It's a fantastic looking car, I think, well proportioned, very Daihatsu Storia Cross 4-esque, and in WRC games, for instance, it feels incredible. The proportions are fantastic. It's not overly long, but it's very wide, very chunky, super low centre of gravity. It feels great. But on a production scale, quite a few of Skoda's models, in a similar way to Seat, and for the exact same reason, have very clear roots in Volkswagen tech, because of course they're part of the VAG group, along with Bentley, Bugatti, Ducati, a number of others too. Lamborghini, of course, as well, Audi. Volkswagen has a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, but Skoda in particular has very, very clear ties to Volkswagen models, not just as a brand, but specifically. For instance, the Fabia is based on Polo tech. The Octavia and the Skoda Superb are both very obviously tied to the Volkswagen Passat. Now with the Superb, it was more so the earlier Passats from, say, the earlier 2000s. And you can see that very obviously from the shape. Whereas the Octavia, on the other hand, it tended to keep up more with the latest Passat. A bit more, at least. Now, what I would have liked to have seen, especially, say, in the mid-2000s rather than now, is if Skoda had just done something crazy. And in particular, what I would like to have seen is the Skoda equivalent of the Volkswagen Phaeton, because Skoda has a number of sedans in their lineup, some of them executive, some of them more luxury based like the Superb, so there's clearly a market there, and you do see Superbs being purchased, and they're not cheap cars, they are based on Volkswagen tech after all, so I would have loved to have seen what that could have been like, a Skoda Phaeton in effect. Not necessarily with the same 6-litre W12, but that would have been pretty cool as well. Now I know that marketing-wise that was an obvious choice not to do, because people don't buy luxury Skodas at that level. You know, there's a bit of a difference between a 35 grand Skoda Superb and a 75 grand Phaeton, so of course it's obvious why they didn't do it, but just in dreamland, I would have liked to have seen what that could look like. I think that could have been pretty cool. So that's my first one. My second one on the list is one which isn't as obvious, but there is a precedent there within homologation territory, and of course certain ears will have perked up now because now we're getting into real territory, and that is, I would have liked to have seen a speedster variant of my dream supercar, the Panos GTR1. Because if you look at the essential shape of that car, it looks like it could easily have a convertible version, or in particular, what I'm saying, a speedster version. But technically more of a roadster than a speedster, because of course speedsters tend to have a very low cut window without any top rim like the Eagle Speedster, whereas what I'm talking about is more so like what Mercedes did with the CLK GTR Roadster. They took the roof off and then gave it those absolutely gorgeous buttresses behind the seats. Buttresses happen to be one of my favourite points of car design. I think that any vehicle that you do it to, any sports car at least, or supercar, it makes it look so cool. The Panos, I think, would look amazing with those. So I personally would have loved to have seen that included. It's a very minor change. I can understand why they didn't, because that's simply not really their thing. But at the same time, they did have the open-top LMPs, so it wouldn't have been too far from home. So I would have liked to have seen that for sure. Relatively minor change, would have probably made the car a little bit heavier, but to me I think that would have been cool. Plus, now of course they've gone on to actually do some roadster versions of more the Esperante-based vehicles with even more power. The next one is one which a lot of people, not just me, but probably the most popular one of the five actually, have wanted to see for obvious reasons, and that is a new Maserati supercar. Now technically a couple of these could still happen, and of the five this is probably the most likely to happen at some point, but when I say a Maserati supercar, I don't mean something like a Gran Turismo with 600 horsepower. I'm talking way more than that. I'm talking a spiritual successor to the MC12. The MC12 is one of my absolute favourite cars, and you could arguably say, I would say, that the MC12 is actually the only supercar that Maserati has ever made. Because if you think about it back in the day, the Kamzin, the Mirac, the Bora, they're not supercars. A lot of people might try to claim that they are, but they're really not. They're not as fast as true supercars of the time, like your Lamborghini Miuras, various Ferraris like the Testarossa. They're not that level. They're more so like super sports cars rather than full-on supercars, whereas the MC12 is unarguably a supercar. Now of course the closest thing to that is the birdcage concept, the 75th anniversary Pininfarina with 700 horsepower. Gorgeous looking car. Yes, that is a supercar, but they didn't produce it, so it still doesn't really count. So in effect, I would say the MC12 is their only supercar. Now, what I would have liked to have seen done, and again this could still happen, but with every passing year it's less likely, and that is, what if Maserati did what they did with Ferrari in the early 2000s again? Because of course the MC12 shares a lot of Enzo tech. Same chassis, same engine but detuned, same windshield, same steering wheel base, so it has a lot in common. But it's more obscure, it's more rare, it has the long tail design which makes it faster around a technical circuit. Now what I would have liked to have seen done is a La Maserati. Now of course they wouldn't have called it that, but you get the idea. Just like they did with the Enzo, use La Ferrari tech, pass it over to Maserati and make a Maserati hypercar. Now I think that would have been awesome. This 900 horsepower Maserati hybrid. Once again, it would have probably had more in common with the FXXK than it would have the road-going LaFerrari, because of course the MC12 looks closer to the FXX than the Enzo ever did. So I would have loved to have seen that. Now the disadvantage, or one of the things that probably prevented it, is of course that the MC12 was expressly designed with racing in mind. It was a GT1 car. That's why it looked like a Le Mans car from the 90s. However, they're not doing that now. There's much less of a precedent for it. So in coming years, with rule changes for instance, at Le Mans, that kind of thing, it could still happen. Maserati could retroactively use LaFerrari tech, but I just think that with every passing year now, it becomes less and less likely. And I think that's a shame, because it would have been cool to have that twin rivalry once again, because you've got to say, the Enzo and the MC12 going down a road together, it looks fantastic. And how cool would it have been to add a fourth car to the trio? Of course, Jaguar could have done that with the CX-75, but chose not to. And personally, I like the CX-75 a lot more than the Porsche, the McLaren, or the Ferrari trio. But again, it would have been cool to see the Maserati running up there with the Porsche 918s, the McLaren P1s. it would have almost been like the early 2000s again, in a funny kind of way, where you had the Porsche Carrera GT going up against the MC12 and the Enzo. It could have been like a nice little throwback to about a decade before. But it didn't happen, probably won't. Doubtless Maserati will make a new supercar at some point, but I don't think the ties to Ferrari are going to be as strong, because Maserati is becoming more independent, which is a great thing. Of course, they have the Ghibli, the Quattroporte, the Levante. That's great for them. I'm really happy that they're doing well. They are my favourite car manufacturer, so of course I love to see that success. And doubtless they'll have a supercar down the line. I just tend to think that it will probably be something more like an Aston Martin Vanquish level machine rather than a hypercar. So for me that's a little bit disappointing, but of course it remains to be seen. Next up is actually another one in a very similar style to the Panos, but is actually the car which single-handedly made me come up with this video topic, because it's a car which I've always wanted to see, and I could never understand why this particular manufacturer didn't do it. And that is the Saleen S7. The Saleen S7, I think, is one of the best-looking American cars ever made. It's one of the most competitive American cars ever made, for sure, and one of the best American supercars. I would have loved if Saleen had made, just like what I said about the Panos, a roadster version of the Saleen S7. The reasons why they didn't, you could say they're fairly obvious. With the racing ties, it's not entirely necessary to make a roadster, but again, those kind of cars, just like what Mercedes did with the CLK GTR, look how desirable and how exclusive and how valuable it made that car. They only made, 5, I think, of the roadsters. They're all worth like $2 million or more. So if Saleen had made that kind of car for the S7, imagine how that could have looked. A Saleen S7 with the roof taken off, still with the gull wing doors, or the swan wing doors you could say, but with CLK GTR roadster style buttresses once again behind the seats. I think that would look absolutely incredible. They'd probably uprate the interior a little bit more leather padding, just like a Spiker roadster would have. I think that would have been a gorgeous looking car. I wouldn't like to see many, if any, changes to the bodywork, but again, a Saleen S7 twin-turbo roadster could have potentially been the fastest open-top car in the world for a little while if they'd have actually done that, so it could have got the car even more exposure. But they didn't do it, but that was the car that actually instigated this entire concept to me of these variations that I would have liked to have seen that didn't happen. And the final one on the list is one which could kind of mirror the first one in some ways for some people, being not quite as exotic, not quite as interesting perhaps, but one which in a funny kind of way I think actually could happen. And of all 5, it's kind of the most likely, or at least the most feasible, and that is a true hot hatch from Citroën. Because Citroën has an interesting history when it comes to hot hatches, because they have made them, but they tended to be around the 80s. You had the AX, you had, I think it was the BX that they used for Group B rally, and there was that ultra rare wide-bodied Group B road variant, the homologated car. So when it comes to hot hatches, they certainly have a history, and it's a pretty extreme one, but for whatever reasons they chose not to carry that over to modern day with the C1, the C2, the C3, and in particular I'm saying the C4. Now I think that the Citroën C4, in particular from the year 2000s, where it was much more similar to stuff like the Volvo C30 and the Ford Focus, I think that was a perfect base to have a hot hatch return. Because think about it, the Sebastian Loeb rally version was a capable car, a dominant car. In fact, it proved exactly what that platform was capable of, just like the Focus did. So if they could have got some of that spirit, some of that ability down into the road car, how cool could that have been? And you wouldn't necessarily need to keep all-wheel drive, because look at what Ford did with the WRC car, and then transferring that DNA down into the Ford Focus RS from around 2003. That is an incredible hot hatch, a widely loved one, ultra rare, extremely fast. Look how good that car is in the Gran Turismo franchise. It's fantastic, it's so OP, and in real life they sold out of those immediately, and it left just the ST170s left. Likewise, I think Citroën could have done that with the C4. It wouldn't have needed to be all-wheel drive. The Ford Focus RS proved that. That's a front-wheel drive car, and look how good that is. They could have made this, say, 220 horsepower, front-wheel drive, WRC, DNA kind of passing on of the baton to the road car style, which in a funny kind of way would not only have made it relevant in the hot hatch market, but would have also been a nice homage to their own history with the Group B rally car. So to me that's something which could still happen, but it wouldn't happen in that sense, because of course the C4's moved on since then, so it would be probably more of an understated modern take on a hot hatch, because of course now with various regulations, hot hatches are having to produce less power, at least for a time, while manufacturers work around that. The Golf R, for instance. They've already said that the next one is going to be a little bit less powerful. Doubtless others will have to as well. So it's kind of a perfect time for Citroën. They could bring out a car with that kind of power, maybe invest in the research a little bit more, because people are ready, I think, to see an alternative to the Golf, the Focus, the usual suspects, if you will. And for me, Citroën, they have design on lock. People like the way that Citroëns look. They win awards for the way that they look. And although I don't think I'd ever buy a Citroën, I do think they have the potential to make much more desirable cars in terms of performance, and not just design. Because for design, they're pretty good. They're interesting, they're different, they're unique, they have imagination. But for performance, they're kind of mediocre. I would like to have seen them change that with a true hot hatch version of their hot hatch flagship. But that's it for my 5 pick. A Skoda Phaeton, a Panos Roadster, a Salina 7 Roadster, a La Maserati, and a hot hatch version of the Citroën C4. Those are the 5 cars that really pop out to me quickly that I would have loved to have seen happen, or loved to have seen variations on the theme. So of course, slap down in the comments below what you would like to have seen. Could be something like I did, like a variation of something that didn't happen, like a Lexus LFA convertible, for instance, or it could be something that just didn't happen at all, like my Skoda Phaeton. But I'd love to see what your picks are, because as I said, it's a super broad subject, it allows for a massive amount of creativity. The sandbox is huge on this matter. So slap that down below, and of course stick around next week for another topic. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.